The fight for women's suffrage began as early as anyone can remember, but it truly became a battle starting in the early 19th century. The Seneca Falls Convention was one of the first big fights for the right to vote and brought much attention to the issue of gender inequality. Although the early push for equality failed, many more attempts came later in the century through the Progressive era.
The mentality of patriarchy limited the possibility of ever having true gender equality. However, that did not stop female activists from standing up for what they believed in. Women such as Susan B. Anthony, Elizabeth Cady Stanton, and Carrie Chapman Catt proved to be very powerful in this push for equal voting rights. Contrary to popular belief, not every woman wanted suffrage. Some conservative women feared it would make them too manly and break traditional social roles. This made the opposition even greater.
Susan B. Anthony lived from 1820 to 1906. She was an activist for many movements. For example, temperance, abolition, the rights of labor, and equal pay for equal work. As a push for the constitutional amendment giving women the right to vote, she formed the National Women's Suffrage Association. She led this group until 1900. In 1872, she was arrested for voting and bringing attention to the suffrage movement. In 1876, she delivered a speech at the protest at the centennial of our nation's independence, entitled Declaration of Rights, which was written by other suffragettes. She made women's suffrage her life's work and died 14 years before the 19th Amendment was passed.
Elizabeth Cady Stanton was born in Jamestown, New York in 1815 and died in 1902. She was an author, lecturer, and chief philosopher of the women's rights and suffrage movements in 1848. She issued a call and held for the first women's rights convention in Seneca Falls. This is where she introduced the Declaration of Sentiments, which she modeled after the Declaration of Independence. This served as an outline of what women's rights should be. She published the Women's Bible, which challenged the ideas that women should be more submissive to men. She died from heart failure, and though she never got the right to vote, she left behind a legacy.
Progressives often argued that women's politics added to the traditional jobs as wives, mothers, and caregivers. Margaret Sanger fought for the rights of women to have access to contraceptives, and Charlotte Hawkins Brown worked to get African American children a good education. Florence Kelley fought for protection of women in the workplace. By turning women's original roles into public political roles, it gained more support for women's suffrage.
Two main solutions were proposed to solve the issue at hand, including the 19th Amendment and Prohibition. Prohibition may not seem exactly related, but oddly enough, it is. A ban on alcohol would force men to treat women better and keep them out of an altered state of mind. It would keep men in the house rather than at bars, and household income would be spent more responsibly. In order for prohibition to be passed, the voters needed to support the ban on alcohol. Clearly, the men would not vote for this. Therefore, women need to be able to vote. This led to the women's Christian temperance movement, their goal being to make alcohol illegal. This was a success, started with the prohibition in 1919. The 19th Amendment would give women the right to vote, as well as establishing stronger gender equality. Wyoming was the first state to allow women to vote in 1867. In 1872, 16 women, including Susan B. Anthony, were arrested for illegally voting in Rochester, New York. In the 1890s, Colorado, Idaho, and Utah accepted women's suffrage. By 1919, 39 states had given women the right to vote. Overall, the women's suffrage movement was successful and it gave women the right to vote. However, some women, such as Alice Paul, argued that the 19th Amendment did not give women equal rights to men. This is because although the amendment addressed the issue of the vote in reference to gender equality, it did not talk about any other problems such as political offices.